Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I don't know about you, but I feel like it's been a long time. Maybe it's just a long week, and I've just been ready to get this show on the road. My name is Stevie Collier, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin. And today we are honored to have the awesome Liesl K. Hill, and she is the author of the short story, The Hatching. So I've been excited about this episode because guess what? It's about dragons. And Andy, of course, has taken it and made it not fun.
I'd like to think that I made it more fun and more intelligent because I actually did some research instead of just saying dragons.
Dragons. That's sad. What I did.
What did you call the dragons' two-legged cousins? The Weaverins, or what was the
name?
Oh
God, the Wyverns. The Wyverns.
Wyverns, right? Everyone knows that it's wyverns, but Stevie comes on and says the Wyverns, and I think he said it a couple of times before I could interrupt.
God, so embarrassing. That and discount.
Yes, I'm gonna keep a list of all of these things that Stevie mispronounces, and then we're gonna have an entire podcast, literally an hour-long show where I just read off the things that Stevie mispronounced. It's gonna be awesome.
You've seriously ruined my reading process because I can't read a book now, and when I come over one of those words, I'm like, oh my God, and it just takes me out of the flow.
You hear my voice in your head.
Yeah, I do. You know, because I read a lot, and I saw these words, and so that's how I pronounce them. Besides, wyvern sounds stupid. It's wyvern sounds much more like the wind. It's wyvern, wind, and Slytherin, stuff like that. Wyvern sounds like a mixture of whining and wife. Okay, I'll be quiet now. So I'm trying to bring this back where I ask all three of us, myself included, obviously, did anything cool happen this week?
I'll let you guys go first because I've got some awesome stuff.
Okay, Liesl, anything?
Let's see.
Book release.
Honestly, this week hasn't been that big. I mean, I've just had lots of time to get writing in, so that's always a cool thing.
No, that is a cool thing.
Wasn't it last week, Liesl? Sorry, Steve, Liesl, wasn't it last week that you guys hit the USA Today bestseller list, or was that 2 weeks ago?
I think that was 2 weeks ago for the Marked by Fate.
What? Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, Marked by Fate. They hit like 58, 56, something like that.
Yeah.
So you are a USA Today bestselling author.
Well, no, I'm actually not an author in the anthology, but I was just like involved in some of the groups that were putting it together.
Oh, okay. But it's still really cool though to be a part of something like that.
Really well.
There's a lot of money that goes into promoting something to hit those lists. I've done a lot of research on it, so it's a lot of work. So I have heard though that a lot of people will submit their work to these conglomerations of short stories so they can put by their name USA Today bestseller and stuff.
Right.
Because once you hit that list, it doesn't matter what you are, USA Today bestseller. So that's awesome. And you know what? You have a edge because now you know all the stuff behind it. And I'm jealous. It's cool. And you have the connections too. So when it happens again.
Yeah, let's hope so. It always helps to have the accolades. So
yeah, right. Andy. Oh, okay. So Andy has some big stuff he wants to talk about. For me, nothing. Not that I can think of. Really cool happened. I did pull a big prank on my girlfriend, and it's a funny story that I wanted to tell Andy and Liesl. So she put the idea in my head. She was like, "Oh wow, the 4 territories. Oh, that's so cool. I'm so proud of you." Blah, blah, all that. Well, okay, it was really nice for her. And then I was like, something started brewing in my head. I'm like, I'm gonna mess with her. And she actually was like helping this, and she didn't even know. She goes, "You should make a pen name because you read a lot of horror." And I do. I just finished another horror novel. And I was like, yeah, I was thinking about that. But, erotica is selling really well. And I'm a pretty nasty person. I think I could do really well with that. And she got mad. She got really mad at me. And what's sad is I was really contemplating doing it. you know, because, you know, just to try. I don't know, but I've never read one, but it went from such a happy moment to like quiet, but it's one of those jokes that doesn't have a happy ending. No, I was just in trouble all day. So, you know, that's my good story. It's TMI, but it was funny.
That's awesome. I love pranks. It's been such a long time since I've been able to do my pranks. My wife is not a very big prankster, but at the Indie Tale convention that I attended last month, I was at a table having dinner with, or you know, I was at the opening ceremony, sort of a party, and I was sitting drinking, talking, and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, can you keep an eye on my purse?" They leave their purse there on the chair, and they said, "Don't take anything out." I was like, "Well, what if I put stuff in?" And they're like, and so I absolutely took the dare, and the entire night it was just like sticking things in her purse. You know, we put a candle from the centerpiece in her purse. I roped her friend into putting like empty beer bottles and
Oh, wow.
straws, and I'm telling you, there's a picture on my my Facebook group of all the things that we stuck in her purse. The next day we went out and had, you know, lunch with them. And on the way home, literally while we were crossing the street walking, I had collected soy sauce packets and wrappers and plastic spoons and was sticking them in her backpack. I think I ended up sticking about 30 things in her bag, her laptop bag, and her backpack. But the best part is I got other authors to do it with me. We were having a table, a signing room, and so I went up to the guy on the table next to her and gave him something and had him put it in her purse. And then I got her friend to put something else in her purse. And then I got some, you know, like New York Times best-selling authors to get in on the fun. And so by the end of the convention Saturday, she was totally paranoid because she was finding stuff in her purse that had no reason being there. And there were a few things like, I didn't put that in there. You know, someone put a condom in. If I put that in, that would be very inappropriate, but someone else put that in there. And you're like all kinds of stuff. And so she was freaking out because everybody at the convention was in on it in a way. You know, I got like 20 people to do it. It was so much fun.
She didn't blame you though, did she, for the condom?
No. I made it very clear that who was responsible for it.
That's funny.
But it was the most fun that I've had.
And you said you had some cool things that you've done this past week.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to talk about the Chris Fox 5,000 words per hour method. I tried that for the first time, and I got a 52,000 word novel done in just over 2 weeks.
Wow!
Man, that is busting it out right there.
That's about 40% faster than my average output. Like before, I was doing about 2,000 to 2,500 words in 2 hours. And with this method, I was doing 2,000 words per hour. And they weren't very pretty words. Actually, you know, I went over them and I was expecting it to be just utter rubbish. And they were a lot cleaner than I expected. Like I had to do, you know, a lot of editing and tightening up. But it took me 4 days to clean up the 50,000 words and flesh out the scenes, you know, that needed work on. But 50,000 words in 2 weeks and 2 days is amazing. So I would highly recommend that writing method for anybody who wants to increase their productivity.
Yeah, I actually have the app, and the app really helps as well.
I looked for the app. I couldn't find it.
It's on the iPhone, so.
Yeah, I looked for the app, and then I posted it in the group where he is, and he said he had to take it down.
Oh, man, that sucks. I think you actually get to keep it though if you have it on your phone already. So
yeah. I got another one though. I downloaded another app that's for writing sprints. You know, 25-minute sprints. Do 4 of those in an afternoon, 2 hours. I get a 4,000 word chapter done. It really helps to have everything plotted out to a certain extent beforehand. Like I divided the book into 20 scenes or beats. And that ended up being, you know, about 13 chapters, 4,000 words each, give or take. But having those beats written out beforehand was really helpful in getting the story out there. Because, you know, I just went from one to the other, transitioned, you know, added the emotional stuff and the action and all of that. But really it helped to get the book written. And so I'm going to try it for the next one.
That is really good news. And something else I wanted to start doing at the beginning is, Liesl, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself for new readers that potentially might want to read your books?
Okay. Yeah, I actually write several different genres. Obviously, we'll be focusing on fantasy here, but I actually write crime fiction and historical fiction. I write under 2 different pen names. One of them is just my initials, so it's L.K. Hill, and the other one is my full name, Liesl K. Hill. Fantasy I have is actually dystopian, but I'm just kind of taking my first foray into high fantasy with this dragon story. The Hatching is a kind of a prequel to a series that I'm writing, and the first book will be out next year that focuses on dragons. And so it's very staunchly in the high fantasy genre.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And how long have you been writing?
Oh, let's see. I started writing before I graduated college, and I think I finished my first manuscript, which was my historical fiction, in 2009. So it's been a few years, and done it off and on, and I'm closer to full-time writer now than I have been in the past, but off and on since for, I don't know, close to 10 years probably, because I finished my manuscript in 2009, but I was writing, in the few years before that too. So
yes. So you said you did a historical fiction. Did that have something to do with college?
Not directly, but it did come from college. It's actually based in Russian history, and I was a history minor, so I took like 4 semesters of Russian history. I kind of fell in love with it, and I really loved my professor. And so yeah, I mean, it came about because of college for sure, but it wasn't like something I necessarily did to get my degree or that was integrated with my schooling at all.
I know Andy is a fan of things that aren't Western, like England and stuff like that. Different fantasies based in different countries, right?
Yeah, outside Europe. Joshua Robertson, we had him on for the couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, months ago, whatever. He writes based on Slavic mythology. His family is actually from that area, the Slavic region. And it's awesome to find fantasy that's steeped in those other cultures, because most fantasy is very French, Germanic, Viking, British, Celtic, all, those are the standard flavors, maybe some Italian thrown in there. But then you get fantasy that's written about, the southern Spain, northern Africa, or Saudi Arabia, the Middle East in a medieval setting, or like all of that. That stuff, that's when fantasy gets really cool.
Yeah, I actually have a book of Russian myths and legends that I've been going through. I mean, I have my story, what's going to happen, fairly well plotted out, but I'm kind of using it to, throw some twists and turns in there and see if I can make it a little more interesting.
Very cool.
And so, like we talked about earlier, today's big topic is dragons. Get it? Big topic, because dragons are big. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't shake your head, Andy. You know it's good. It's good.
Only good puns are encouraged on this podcast, Stevie. Terrible puns are not allowed.
Are any of them good?
Just like thug and lit. There are some amazing puns.
Thug and lit. Oh man, I had another one for you too, and now I can't remember it. I need to get more thug. I need to get more gangster. Thank God. I don't know if you could tell, Liesl, but I'm quite gangsta, so I'm the most gangsta fantasy writer, if that is possibly a thing. Actually, me and my girlfriend were at a bar once, like the bars in front of the movie theaters when you can have like food and stuff at a movie theater or whatever. It's called Flicks here in Texas, Flicks Brew House. And we were talking, and I don't know what we were talking about. It was something super dorky. And she was like, wow, I'm dating a huge dork. Like, I was wearing a Star Wars shirt. I had the Star Wars like special edition Vans. And I have this beard. I just look like a total dweeb, but it's all right. I love it. I love it. So I love it. So dragons. Just for a kickoff, why don't you tell us a little bit about The Hatching?
Okay. The Hatching is, like I said, it's a short story about a boy who is he lives in a world where there are dragons and dragon riders, but they're a very elite class, and one of them comes to his village, and he is then identified as someone who can potentially become a dragon rider. So it's just kind of about him being taken out of his comfort zone, taken out of his own world. And then there's a really good little twist at the end because it doesn't lead to what you probably think it's going to lead to. And yeah, just a fun little short story that'll lead into a bigger series.
Does it have sort of that flavor of the Dragon Riders of Pern? Does it sort of reminiscent of that?
I think it does. I get asked that a lot. I've actually never read the Dragon Riders of Pern, and I've kind of debated about it because I'm not sure I really want to be influenced by it since I haven't actually written my series yet. Like I said, I've got most of it planned out, so it probably wouldn't be a big deal either way. But I've been told before by people who read it, have read my short story and have read parts of what I've already written, that it feels a little bit like the Dragon Riders of Pern.
That's
so
cool.
Probably
I only read one of the books, but literally the series is called The Dragon Riders of Pern. And when you said Dragon Riders,
right.
Sort of. I'm the same way. People have said, "Oh man, the Last Bucellari, my first series," and they're like, "Oh, it's so much like this author Michael Moorcock and his Elric Stormbringer series," and I have never read them, and so I'm refusing to read them until I'm done with the series, so that I can say, yes, it was, it's not plagiarism or copying or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it is about dragon riders, so it is the same kind of stuff as that.
That's very cool. What is your favorite dragon in popular fiction, Liesl?
Oh man, I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I mean, obviously Game of Thrones is big right now. I always liked Dragonheart. The story was
Oh yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of my very favorite Disney fairy tales was Sleeping Beauty, which also has a dragon in it. So I've got quite a few favorites.
That was a scary ass dragon for a kid movie. I ain't gonna lie.
It really was. Yeah.
Breathing like green fire and stuff, and it doesn't have cartoony eyes. They're like slanted and mean. I remember being a little bit scared, but when you're in daycare with all the girls, you're just gonna be like, "Oh, this is a crappy princess movie." But I'm gonna answer that question. I'm a huge Andy. I know you just finished Aragon. I don't think you were okay with it, right?
I was very much on the fence. I don't think I even finished the book.
What? Oh, you got to go finish it, man.
The thing is, I was getting to the part where they were underground in the resistance place. It just didn't keep me going.
It does slow down. It slows down.
So I went and I read the rest of the book on Wikipedia or one of these pages, and I was like, yeah, okay, it was an interesting story, but it just lost me.
You are a heathen. Who does that? It's cheating. That is cheating.
When I have so little time to read, I have to sort of make hay while the sun shines.
Okay, who's the Texan here? What the heck was that? Wow. Oh, I got one of those. So I was at my grandparents' house, and my grandpa was mad, like seriously mad. Like he looked like he wanted to hit somebody. We're not talking like joking mad, right? And he's like, if she keeps this up, she's just like a pig who got into the cabbage field or something like that. And I stopped it. It was a very heated moment. I was like, wait, a pig who got into the cabbage field. And then everybody breaks out laughing because once something like that gets brought up in conversation, and people start analyzing it, it's ridiculous. And it's because if a pig eats your cabbage, he's in trouble, because that's your cabbage. I don't know. My grandpa's from Arkansas, but still, I would say it's a pretty hillbilly remark right there. Hillbilly saying.
They really use those to great effect in Modern Family. Whenever they want to show Cam, where I don't remember where he's from, whether it's from Arkansas or one of those states down there, they have him say these things that are just so, so hillbilly, and they're really funny.
Yeah.
They're just so strange.
I love that show. Well, actually, now that you bring up Modern Family, I was almost on that show, actually. I was so a lot of people don't know, but I'm actually a bodybuilder, and I'm not lying. I actually do weightlift every day very seriously. And I went for an audition to be a football player, and I got a call back. So I was actually already driving home in a taxi, and I get a phone call from my agent, and they're like, "You need to go back. The producers are there, and they want to see you." And so I went back and I reread it, and I guess they didn't like it, so I didn't get cast for the job. It was like a single line too. It's ridiculous what you have to go through to be on TV. So
and that was for Modern Family?
Mm-hmm. right when it first started. I was around 17 years old. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, but
Stevie, the almost world famous actor.
I was on TV once, but I'm pretty open with everybody, on the podcast, but that I'm going to keep secret. So what I was on, but it was on a major network, and right today it's embarrassing. So it's embarrassing. So
And this has been our dragons discussion.
yeah, no. This has been Stevie's tangent session.
Tangent of the week, yes.
Okay. All right. So back to dragons. I was talking, Aragon was probably one of my favorites. But when I was growing up, my mom bought my brother a book called Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher.
Mm.
Have you all heard of it?
I remember that vaguely, yeah.
Really? It was his book, and I stole it, and I read it in one night, and I was in love with dragons. And my brother's an artist, so I begged him to teach me how to draw dragons. So I have this dragon notebook of all my dragon drawings, and they're just horrible. I was so proud of them, but they're just garbage. So growing up, I actually had a dragon like addiction. I was reading all these books like Dragonlance, just hoping there'd be a scene about a dragon. So
lots of them, hence the name of the title.
Yeah. What? Dragonlance has a lot of dragons?
Stevie, Dragonlance. It's like dragon back battles galore.
Well, see, they were too hard of books to read. I was so young that I couldn't even read Redwall. That's how young I was.
Right. Okay.
And
yeah, dragons don't show up until the second or third book in the first series, and then by the second or third series, they're everywhere.
See, do you blame 8-year-old me for not waiting a little bit? See, I wasn't as smart as you when I was 8 years old. I was still reading like Kittens with Their Mittens. So why did you pick for your first? So this is your first real step into fantasy, Liesl, right? You're hatching, and
yeah.
So why dragons?
For probably the same reason everyone picks them, because it's just something I've always really liked, and I've always been really, really into high fantasy. But when I first started writing, I kind of felt like I was too intimidated to actually write that genre, because I had it up on a pedestal, And so it kind of took me getting a few books under my belt and everything before I could really consider it. But I kind of always knew that I would write about dragons. I knew that would be my subject, just because I'm a geek about it and I love them.
Yeah. And so you do have plans for a future series with dragons?
Yes.
Is there anything you want to disclose about this series?
Oh, what should I disclose about the series?
I
don't know. I'm still kind of in the planning stages of it, so I don't really have a lot that's really concrete that I can say. But you'll kind of learn from actually reading The Hatching that there's actually kind of two different tiers of dragon riders. There's those that can simply have the ability to connect with the dragon and ride on the dragon's back, but there's also a class of them that can actually transform themselves into dragons. So we've got a couple of different things going on there.
We actually had Miss Ivy, is her name? Ivy Robertson?
Lillian Oak.
Lillian Oak. I'm thinking Ivy because of that red hair. Poison Ivy. I thought they just got married.
They might have. I don't know. Her author name is Lillian Oak, so they're.
That's right. Yeah, and she had a dragon, and she had a guy who could turn into a dragon in her book, and it was in my opinion, it was pretty. Yeah, a dragon shifter. Anyway, it was a cool idea. So.
Yeah,
actually,
it's fun to play with.
So, Andy, you said you did some psychology or some research behind dragons, haven't you?
I love doing diving into these things, and so I found this one blog post where a guy who sort of dissects what makes dragons so popular. And originally, dragons started off, or there's this belief that dragons started off being sort of these fearsome creatures because snakes. Everyone's afraid of snakes, so snakes elicit that fearful response. So when you see this serpentine beast coiling towards you, it's pretty scary. You know, that it makes sense that dragons would have that. And if you, in fact, if you look at the dragons of old, the original dragons, like the Chinese concept of dragons, they were really snakes. Mm-hmm. Some of them had legs, but none of them had wings. But then they evolved into the dragons we know today over time. But yes, you know, everyone's afraid of snakes, and in fact, snake bites leave a psychological mark. After a snake bite, research has found that many victims may experience PTSD as a result of a snake bite. Like, it's more than just the physical trauma of the bite, but it's an actual psychological response. So it makes sense that, you know, that people would. Well, and after over time through the Middle Ages, dragons evolved because of the fear of wolves. Europe was afraid of wolves. You know, they were overrunning the French countryside and, you know, killing people and terrorizing. So wolves were sort of the monsters of the time. And so then, you know, when they wanted to blow them up and make them bigger and more terrifying, that's when they, you know, they elongated their necks and their tails, and they made them bigger and more bestial. And that's where you get the four-legged dragons with sort of the serpentine snout from. Like, that's where the concept originated.
Well, you were right. I said that you took all the fun out of it, but actually that was pretty interesting. Wolves, really? I never would have thought that.
Well, if you look at the dragon, the way they walk, it's the same way that a wolf walks. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but, you know, animals, they have a different walk. You know, the cats walk different than canines, who walk different than horses, who walk different than hippopotamuses. So each, the way these animals walk sort of explains their origins in a way. And so a dragon has the same general walk. They don't lope like wolves do, but they have the same, you know, paw movements and stuff like that. So, and it was only up until recently that the idea of dragon riding became a thing. You know, dragons were always sort of the enemy, the thing to be feared, until modern fantasy came around, where you have the dragon riders of Pern, you have Aragon, you have Game of Thrones, How to Train Your Dragon. Like, but it really wasn't until, what would it be, 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, that dragons became pets, because there was a lot more shift towards humans bonding with pets at the time. You know, before dogs were, you know, good boy and all of that, but there was no real bond in that sense. But then in the 50s or 60s or whatever, they started emphasizing that more. And that's where the idea of domesticating an animal like a dragon came to light.
What about Asian dragons? Do you know anything about those guys?
You know, I don't know a lot about them. Japanese don't have dragons as much as the Chinese do. I know that that there is a cultural significance to them. I'm going to look it up right now. They are definitely serpentine. They've got long snake-like bodies and 6 legs with a long tail.
They're usually water-based, aren't they? Water dragons?
There are water dragons, yes. Let me see. There's a sea god, the ruler of the seas and ocean, Watatsumi. There were shifters. One dragon, Toyotama Nime, was the daughter of the dragon god. She was supposedly the ancestor of Japan's first emperor. There are sea monsters that were sort of shark and crocodile that became, you know, dragons and stuff. And so dragons are common throughout Chinese mythology, Japanese mythology, even other parts of Asia, India, and the Southeast Asian thing. So they are definitely very old.
Mm-hmm.
And those two also stemmed from wolves and snakes, you think?
No, because they're definitely serpents. The wolf concept is much more European. I believe that's where you get those dragons. Oh. The dragons who, you know, they move like, let's say, Smaug in the Hobbit movies. You know, their style of movements. Whereas the undulating serpentine movement of the Chinese or the Japanese dragons is much more based on snakes. Because snakes in Japan, I believe, and in Japan and China, they have a different significance. Like there's a lot less fear of them. Let me see, I'm doing just a little bit of Googling.
Who knew dragons would be such a complicated thing, like where they came from, stuff like that. I mean, the snake thing was easy to figure out, but let's
see.
You know, you brought up How to Train Your Dragon. I went into that movie with the lowest expectations, and I left having a great time. I love that movie so much. It's so funny. Here's an interesting fact for my fans. The book that I wrote, the first 50,000 words I ever wrote, the second book I ever wrote, which will never see the light of day, it was to the point where it was a two-headed dragon companion. And like I told Andy, it was around that time where a vampire got introduced and the whole thing was just spiraling out of control. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. No more of this story. But then he could start talking to the dragon and he was half vampire. And I was like, okay, not having dragons and vampires, a dragon riding half vampire guy with a big sword on his back. That's ridiculous. Oh man,
that's awesome.
I might as well release it because I've just told everybody the embarrassing truth about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So today we are reading the word of the day. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so the word of the day is shear. Most people will relate that to sheep. You shear a sheep. But shear is also to break off or cause to break off owing to a structural strain. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a complicated journey, so follow along. Shear stress arises from the force vector component parallel to the cross section instead of perpendicular. So let's say your typical stress would occur when you've got a surface like this, like say your skin, and something goes like this, right? Perpendicular, goes against it. Shearing is when it's parallel. So like, let's say you've got two sheets of wood stuck together. They shear by splitting instead of cutting in the middle. So I'm referring to this word because I read it in Brandon Sanderson's, one of his books, and it was referring to someone losing a limb. Literally, the limb, the arm or the leg or whatever it was, separated like that. And it was just such a great word to describe something being cut off because you've got those two separating like that.
Well, what about casual readers? Would they have known what that meant? Or was it the way most people will?
No, most people will recognize it as not decapitated, but amputated or cut off. Like that's a very clear word denoting that sort of, but like almost like the sword cut through the body with such force that there was no resistance from the bone and the muscle and stuff. It just sheared it right off. Like that's the connotation.
Okay. I thought the word was going to be harder to say, and it's so easy. No fun for me to screw up.
Like I said, it's going to be a one-syllable word that you can't mispronounce this week. Next week, I'll make it a little harder.
Please do. Now you've really taken that away from our fans, man. That's why they come to watch me fail. So today, Lisa, we are reading an excerpt from The Hatching.
Yep.
And Andy, do you think it's time to transition over to that?
Absolutely. So Lisa, how many parts are there in this little scene we're going to be acting out?
How many parts?
Yeah, like how many people are talking?
Just two.
Okay. Which part do you want to read?
It doesn't matter to me. We've got Darnik and Wenlin. Dragon doesn't really have any lines.
All right, but do you want to do the narrator or do you want to do one of the characters?
I can do the narrator.
All right, perfect. And now, what kind of people are Wenlin and the other guy?
Wenlin is a little boy. He's the one that's just been taken out of his village by the dragon rider. Darnik is the dragon rider, so he's very intimidating to Wenlin, kind of a mystical figure.
I think these roles are pretty clear, don't you think, Stevie?
No. What are you saying? What are you saying, man? Wow. It's Bash on Stevie Day, I guess. All right, Andy, who are you saying I should be, huh?
You should definitely be the kid, Stevie.
Okay.
Because they're intimidated by someone. I don't know if that
All
in
right.
real life.
and how old is the kid?
His age is actually unknown, but he's like 10, 12. He's an orphan, so
Okay.
he doesn't know when he was born.
Yeah, I'll do that voice. And that's Wendlin?
Wenlin, yep.
Wendlin. Okay. And Andy, you are going to be, what is it, Darnet?
Yeah,
Yep.
the servant, right?
Yeah, the servant. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's
Okay.
do it.
And okay, so do we need any backstory for this excerpt?
Mostly just what I've already told you. He was in his village, and this rider came in and identified him as someone who could become a dragon rider, which is rare, and took him with him when he left, basically. And that's where we're at. He's
Okay.
with the rider. So you want me to start with the narration then?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. They flew into the sunset until the sunset faded to darkness. The wind numbed Wenlin's fingers and his legs, and back ached from clinging so fiercely. The dragon landed on a flat, grassy area atop a rock formation. The sides of the formation were sheer and covered with loose dirt and some shrubs. The servant helped Wenlin dismount, and when his feet hit solid earth, he felt lightheaded, as though he still moved. Wenlin moved to the side of the grassy area and looked down. He stood higher above the ground than the tallest building in Tranquil. That's his village, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Wenlin gasped softly. This must be a mountain. A soft breeze came from behind him in puffs, threatening to push him over the side.
Something wrong, boy.
The servant's voice boomed at Wenlin's shoulder, and he jumped, turning slowly toward his new master. He felt foolish. Anything he said now would probably earn him a beating. At his hesitation, the servant stepped forward and put a huge hand on his shoulder.
Tell me, my boy,
he said firmly. He glanced over Wenlin's shoulder at the drop-off.
Are you afraid of heights?
No, my lord. It's just, this is a mountain. I thought all the mountains were gone. The stories aren't true.
The servant dropped his hand and chuckled.
I'm afraid not, son. This is not a mountain.
But
Wenlin turned toward the cliff's edge again.
We're so high up, higher than the Master Neiman's house back home.
He looked back to find the servant smiling indulgently at him.
True,
the man said.
But the mountains were many houses high, not just one.
Wenlin felt his eyes widen.
Were they bigger than your dragon?
Bigger than 100 dragons, as high as we flew today.
He motioned toward his blue dragon, which sat on its haunches in the grass, spiked tail swishing lazily. It created the soft breeze Wenlin had felt earlier at the cliff's edge.
As high as a dragon can fly, and some higher.
The servant continued.
This,
he motioned around them.
Most would call a plateau. Some might call it a knoll, if not for the sheer sides. It's not very hillish, is it?
Wenlin shook his head.
No, I'm afraid all the stories are true.
The servant looked toward where the sun had disappeared.
The mountains fell when Basmal made his play for power.
He looked down at Wenlin.
Long ago.
Will they ever rise again, my lord?
Wenlin asked, surprised at his own courage. He'd never had this much conversation with the fox, but then the servant hadn't yet cuffed him for speaking. He might as well make the most of it.
I doubt it.
The servant gave a shake of his head.
Even dragons couldn't knock over a mountain or force it to rise again. And the dragons are mostly gone now. You'll have to get used to heights from now on, though. You'll travel the skies a great deal from now on.
A small twinge in Wenlin's stomach made his jaw clench, but he didn't think it was fear he felt. Despite being exhausted, he found himself looking forward to riding on the dragon's back again tomorrow. It brought a freedom he couldn't have dreamed of in the scullery.
What are you called, boy?
Wenlin.
His voice sounded small. The servant nodded.
You may call me Darnek.
Yes, my lord.
He shook his head.
No my lords between us, Wenlin. You're still young, but one day we will be equals.
Yes, my... Darnek.
Good. Actually, now I think on it, we won't be equals. You will stand far above me. What do you think of that?
Wenlin didn't answer. True fear did settle on him then. Surely at some point the servant would realize what a mistake he'd made and send Wenlin back to the fox. He wished they could simply travel the skies forever.
You've no need to fear me, Wenlin. I want your honest opinions. You won't be punished for them here. Where do your thoughts stray?
I think you must be mistaken, sir.
Darnet gave him a knowing smile.
Why must I be mistaken?
It's like the fox. I mean, Master Foxend said, I'm only a rat boy. I can't possibly be suited for the harpy servants.
Rat boy? Is that what they called you?
Wenlin studied the dirt furiously, feeling his cheeks heat.
Yes, sir.
Darnik lifted Wenlin's chin with his index finger.
There's no need to hide from me, Wenlin, and no shame in living. You bow your head to no one from this day forth. For in your veins runs the blood of kings.
But it doesn't.
It does.
He said firmly.
The dragon would not have identified you if it didn't. It's a misconception that a person must actually be a king to qualify. Some bloodlines are ancient. The Darmingian children disappeared 1,000 years ago. Who knows who they married, what paupers are their descendants? Somewhere in your ancestry there lived a king, and he passed the traits in his blood on to you. Now you are destined to join our ranks.
What does that mean exactly?
Darnik smiled again. Wenlin thought it was a friendly smile. He hoped it was.
I can see you're a shrewd boy. Curiosity is never bad unless it becomes sadistic. All I can tell you for now is it's significant the dragon identified you even when I didn't.
Why?
Dragons can only identify their true brothers.
Wenlin frowned, confused.
Do you mean I'll ride him?
He nodded toward the blue dragon.
How can he be my companion? He's yours.
That's not what I mean.
Then what?
He shook his head.
You will understand more, I think, after the ceremony.
Ceremony?
Wenlin's fear must have shown because Darnik turned compassionate eyes on him.
I know this is new to you, and swift. You must trust me, Wenland. Embark on a life most people cannot conceive of. It's nothing to fear. We must perform the ceremony. Tomorrow you receive your first lessons. Then I take you to the Dragon Council.
Wenlin obeyed. Wenlin obeyed, legs trembling. They stood beside the dragon at the cliff's edge, and Darnik produced a dagger. Wenlin winced as Darnik made a cut across the palm of his hand, then turned and carefully inserted the blade between two of his dragon's scales. After a moment, a light orange liquid oozed out. Darnik pulled Wenlin's hand forward until it trembled directly below the orange ooze.
What is it?
Dragon blood. Fire is in their very veins.
A drop of the orange ooze hit Wenlin's wound, burning. Wenlin sucked in his breath as the ooze spit and fizzled over the incision. The burning sensation radiated outward, spreading through Wenlin's entire body. He trembled from the pain and fought to jerk his hand away. Darnik held him steady.
It hurts!
Wenlin screamed.
I know,
He said calmly.
but it will be over quickly.
The ooze disappeared into Wenlin's wound. The blue dragon, purple without the sun, lowered its face and puffed out a tiny tendril of fire. It hit Wenlin's cut perfectly, cauterizing the wound and sealing the dragon's blood inside him. Every muscle in his body felt like water. He shook violently, unable to control his limbs or voice box. Darnik gently lowered Wenlin to the ground. Both his and the dragon's head hovered over Wenlin, looking down into his face.
It's all right now.
Darnik said softly.
Let sleep take you. My companion will keep you safe. His blood will work in you. In the morning, you will be reborn.
Sleep, ancient one.
A deep male voice echoed in Wenlin's head.
For you are all important to this world.
Darkness crashed in. When Wenlin came to, he couldn't see anything. His eyes felt too heavy to open. He uncurled his body from a tight ball. When he sat up, he found hard walls enclosing him on every side. Panic surged in his gut. He screamed, though it came out as a moan. He flailed and kicked his legs. Relief flooded in when one of his legs punched through the wall behind him. He would be able to free himself from this prison. He kicked harder at the walls and discovered they were quite brittle. He smashed them all around and emerged. He felt the sun and the wind on his face, but couldn't see. Some kind of slimy mud covered his eyes. He used his fingernails to claw it away and scratched himself in the process. When did his fingernails grow so long? Warm blood seeped from the scratches, dripping down Wenlin's face. He forced his eyes open. He stood in the meadow he'd camped in with Dartneck the previous night. The sun beamed a brilliant blue. The sky beamed a brilliant blue. The sun shone merrily in its sphere. The cocoon he'd emerged from was made of thin white material. It lay scattered around him in pieces. Wenlin turned his head and found Dartneck astride his dragon, watching. The blue dragon stood at the edge of the drop-off, poised to launch into flight.
Good morning.
Dartneck called.
Time for your first lesson. Can you stand?
Wenlin rolled over and gained his first look at his body. His belly had bulged during his slumber. His legs lengthened. The knee joints now bent the wrong way. His arms were stunted, and hard metallic scales covered him. His skin had turned the color of alfalfa fields in spring, and a long tail coiled around him. Wonder, then turned to Dartneck for explanation. Dartneck merely gazed back. Wenlin stumbled clumsily to his feet, falling onto his stomach twice in the process.
Come.
Dartneck called. Sorry, 1 sec. Wenlin obeyed, finally getting to his three-toed feet and joining him at the edge of the cliff. Dartneck seemed much smaller than he had. Wenlin did not reach the height and stature of the blue dragon, but he stood much closer than he had the night before.
You're on your feet and well on your way. Next, you must learn to spread your wings. Do not fear. They're made to bear you up and will not fail. Watch us and follow.
His dragon leapt from the edge of the cliff. Its wings spread long, and the air currents carried it higher and higher. It beat its wings to gain still more height, then flew a circle to look at Wenlin, wings pumping to keep it in a hover. Wenlin toed the edge of the cliff with thick black talons. It was not far to fall, but still, Wenlin wondered nervously if he would die today. The cliff called to him. The wind beckoned him on. Dartneck's dragon flew figure eights in the distance.
Come, ancient one.
The voice from the night before sounded in his head. The way Dartneck's blue dragon looked at him, Wenlin understood that the voice belonged to him.
Time to embrace your destiny. First, you must learn. Come.
Wenlin's heart pounded against his ribcage. Did he still possess those body parts? And feeling more exhilarated than he ever had in his life, he leapt from the cliff. He fell. It wouldn't take long to hit the rocky ground not far below. Then something amazing happened. He became aware of extra limbs connected to his ribcage. As the frigid air currents hit them, they unfolded. Wenlin pumped them once, twice, 3 times. His talons scratched the rocky ground before it fell away, and the drafts beneath his wings flung Wenlin into the heavens. Had he still been a boy, he would have laughed, but when he tried, smoke spewed from his jaws. He kind of liked it. As he closed in on Dartneck, the servant laughed.
Welcome to the Brotherhood, my boy. Next up, the Dragon Council.
What a cool story. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Very awesome.
I've never
You
been
guys are
able
great
to...
narrators.
Oh, thank you. We should be on Broadway. I think that a lot of times. Many times.
You totally should.
Yeah.
Do you sing, Stevie?
I'm so glad you brought that up.
And that's the Fantasy Fiends podcast for tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to start calling you Rat Boy. No, so Liesel's name is okay. I first saw it as The Sound of Music, and I forgot to tell everybody at the beginning that I was actually in The Sound of Music. It was a huge production at my high school, and I think over 1,000 people saw it, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing because I played Friedrich, and I had to sing. I had to do a solo, and it was one word. It was what is it? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And of course they give me the la, which is one of the higher pitched ones. I couldn't do it. They practiced with me and practiced with me. And so they kept it the way it was. And whenever it was my turn to go la, everybody in the audience would laugh. So I became like a joke. So I was like the joke of the scene. And it hurt my feeling. So
you definitely should not have brought it up.
Yeah. So now I'm still made fun of it to this day by my brother. Yeah.
That's what brothers are for.
Yeah, that's true. He's got his stuff that I make fun of him for. So, well, I think that's it for this episode. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Just I want to hear more about Liesel's books, where we can find her social media, website, all of that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on Amazon. I think I'm pretty exclusive to Amazon with most of my books, but that's going to change in the next month or so. And then I'm going to take a few of them wide. My website is authorlkhill.com. A Facebook profile, which is, most of my profiles are LK Hill Books. So it's facebook.com/LK Hill Books. I've got Twitter, Pinterest, most of the major networks. You can find me if you just type in the name. So yeah.
Awesome. Very nice. And is there anything else, Andy, before I sign us off?
That's it for me.
Okay, and who do you know who we're having on next week?
Yes, I do. We are having Melinda Kuksera. I hope that C is not pronounced like Viscount.
Yeah, better you than me. I've had enough of mispronouncing.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about real-life heroes in our own worlds, about how we are all heroes in our own worlds, not the people in our stories, but us.
Interesting. That's
going to
be a cool theme. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign us off. Thank you, everyone, for watching this Fantasy Fiends podcast episode. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That helps us out tremendously. If you are listening through iTunes or some similar podcast app, please leave us a review. That also helps us out. We will see you next week. Thank you so much, Liesel K. Hill, for being here with us. It was an
thanks for having
awesome episode. I mean, anything about dragons is going to be awesome. So thanks again, everyone. We will see you next week.
Bye.